Hey everybody, Bob Lusk in my truck going live. Hope you can catch up with me. Sorry I was late. Little Nolan, our number 2 age grandson, is going to be a senior this year. So Debbie and I had a kind of a spontaneous chance to take that boy to supper. So we came over here to Sherman, Texas, to the Tokyo Steak Hibachi Sushi thing. So we took Nolan to dinner, so I'm running a little bit late. Glad you can bear with me. So, don't have any music, don't have anything, I'm just going to talk. So I see Chuck Anzalone, Jeremy Duckworth, good to see you guys. And I thought today I would talk about stressors. I see Nick Kajewski checking in. I know I don't pronounce that right, you might have to correct me. But I thought I would talk about stressors of fish and stressors of a pond. You know, I hear about the floods in Kentucky and the drought here in Texas and, you know, extremely hot temperature. Hello, Philip Benefield, Mike Cottrell, good to see you guys. Thanks for letting me be a little bit late tonight, hanging out with my grandson Nolan and Debbie. There's Jennifer checking in. Good to see you. But anyway, I thought I'd talk about stressors. So, and I've written an article about that for the upcoming issue of Pond Boss, which is the September-October issue that is going to the printer tomorrow, by the way. Hey, Jason Rayfield, good to see you, man. So, Leslie, I see Leslie Bandouche, I think. I'm usually pretty good with names, but I don't know if I'm getting it today. Drew Schmidt, good to see you, buddy. So, here are some of the stressors that you need to be thinking about. And there's a handful of them. And the point I want to make, and I really worked pretty hard to get this article out. And Kajewski. I'll try to remember that. Mark Dyer, Justin Ludwig. Good to see you guys. So, and I think the article I wrote is based mainly on largemouth bass. Doug, I do feel better. My throat's a little better. We'll see how long it goes. John Moore, good to see you. Danny Mac, hello there. So, if you think about it, one of the things I taught my kids as they were growing up, as long as you are in survival mode, you cannot thrive. And the analogy I used was say, hey, you know what? We've been Dallas Cowboy football fans forever. And I told my boys, I said, you know, Emmitt Smith may be one of the greatest running backs ever. And I can remember one game in particular when he dislocated his shoulder, but he wouldn't come out. He kept playing and he kept running. It was one of those signature moments that just stays embedded in my brain. So I tell the kids, okay, let's say that Emmitt Smith is out rocking and rolling, fishing in the boat, and he gets sideswiped by a big boat, gets thrown in the lake. You think he's thinking about how well he can run and how fast he can go and just how well he can run a football? No. He's thinking about not dying. He's thinking about what he needs to do to get back in that boat or get out of that lake and not drown. So he's in survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, there's not much chance that we're going to be thriving. It's the same thing with your fish. When your fish are in survival mode, they cannot be thriving. So, part of our roles as pondmeisters is to figure out, hey, Jason Foley, Dustin Pratt's business partner, his leg is coming along nicely. Yep, I think Dustin Pratt, I don't know if he's going to be watching tonight or not, but I'm getting ready to go take a look at his leg here pretty quick. Good to see you, man. Tell him hello. Steve Lewis, I see you. Michael Ehrig, I'm running behind. Philip Benefield, good to see you. So, as long as your fish are trying to survive, they're not going to be thriving. So what are those stressors? What are the things that stress your fish? One of them is temperature. You can't do anything about it. Well, you can do a little bit about it. And I'll tell you about that. You know, when I do these podcasts and when I'm talking to people that I'm consulting with, you know, one of the key points that I tell people is have happy water. Well, the more your water moves, the faster you can make it clean itself up, the better it works. Hey, Nolan. Here comes Nolan. Come here, buddy. Look at there's a bunch of people watching this podcast. There's my Nolan. Tell everybody hello.
Hello.
We just had a great dinner, pal.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. Who loves you, baby?
Papa loves me.
Papa loves me. That's right. We'll see you in a few days, pal.
Thanks
All
for
right.
dinner.
You bet.
Bye,
You're welcome.
Nolan.
See you.
I love you, honey.
Hello, Matt Marsden. Thank you, honey. So, with these stressors, let's see, I just missed something here. Let me see what I missed here. Yep, Jason, we'll get to meet one of these days. Hey, Fred Bingaman, good to see you, pal. All right, so temperature is one of those stressors. Now, if you're aerating your pond, one of the things you need to be doing is checking your temperature. One of the things, Nolan is growing up. The boy got some hair, doesn't he? He is the starting left guard for those Gunner Tigers. And the Gunner Tigers make it at least 4 levels into the playoffs every year. Last year they made it to the state championship and got beat by the Franklin Lions of all things. But they're on tap to go way up into the playoffs this year too, so it'd be fun. There's Mike Cooper checking in. Trevor Fry, good to see you, buddy. So, if you're aerating a pond, I'd be checking the temperature. You need to be checking the temperature top to bottom. Any temperature above 83 degrees is stressful on largemouth bass. Not as much on bluegill, but it's definitely stressful on largemouth bass. Largemouth bass actually start dying in ponds and lakes at 87 and 88 degrees. Hello, Tim Dixon, good to see you. And so there's not a lot you can do about temperature except when you are aerating and you're checking the temperature and you're seeing the temperature top to bottom and it's autonomous top to bottom and it's 87 degrees, then put your aeration system on a timer and do it from like 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning. Then you're going to see the temperature drop 3 or 4 degrees, and that could be all you need to make a significant difference in whether your fish live or die. So water temperature is a stressor. Water quality is a stressor. And what I mean by that is if you've got more than 30 or 40% coverage with aquatic plants, those aquatic plants are photosynthesizing during daylight hours and respiring at night. So if your water chemistry, say your alkalinity is low, the alkalinity is the rolaids, the Tums, the Prilosec for your pond. So if your buffering capacity is low, then when the plants photosynthesize during the daytime, you're going to see a pH begin to go up. Then at night, as they're taking up carbon dioxide, giving off oxygen, you're going to see the pH drop. So you can see pH fluctuations as much as 2 or 3 points through the course of a day. That's stressful. So, water chemistry is a big deal. The oxygen levels, when there's photosynthesis going on, if you've got too many aquatic plants, then you can see the oxygen spike. I've actually seen oxygen super saturated in ponds. In other words, where it's higher than what water can physically hold, and it because it's being produced so quickly with aquatic plants that I've seen oxygen levels go up to 10, 11, and 12 parts per million in afternoon hours in lakes that are heavily vegetated. Then when the reverse happens, when the sun goes down and they start to respire. So when the plants begin to respire, that oxygen level drops because now the plants are taking up oxygen, giving off carbon dioxide. And I've seen ponds go from 11, 12 parts per million total dissolved oxygen in an afternoon down to 3.5 or 4 at daylight the next day. That's stressful. So when your water chemistry is ratcheting up and going down because the alkalinity is too low, or you got too many plants and oxygen levels are going up and falling down, the temperature is too hot, those are all stressors for your fish. And your fish cannot thrive when that's going on. So the things you can do to mitigate that is to manage how much aquatic plant mass you've got. It's how you manage a plankton bloom this time of year. It's how you aerate the water. I was talking to Bruce Condello a couple of weeks ago, and one of the ways he mitigates temperature and oxygen levels is by, and he lives on a rock quarry that is shaped like a big C. And he lives at one end of the C. So he's got these circulators that he can kick on One of them's almost like just a violent fountain, for example, and it's pushing water laterally as well as up, maybe a foot. Then he's got these other circulators that are like underwater fans that he can kick on and start pushing the water like a river current. So those two things help mitigate those spikes in oxygen levels and help keep the water circulating, which helps mitigate some of the chemistry issues that might happen during photosynthesis and respiration. So that's part of how he keeps his water happy, and he grows some gigantic fish. So he mitigates the stress of the water temperature and the water chemistry and oxygen levels by moving the water aggressively. So that's something you can sure think about doing if you want to keep the stressors down. Other stressors are handling the fish. You know, this time of year, if you catch a bass and your water temperature is 86 degrees, you need to use heavy tackle, get it in, don't let it fight very long, and as soon as you catch it, take that picture, get it right back in the lake. If you have hybrid stripers, they will fight to the death in hot water. So avoid that as much as you can. So there's a number of the things that are stressors of fish. Another stressor is how much food do they have? Do they have all the food they need to eat? You know, this time of year, you'd think with reproduction, as it's been through the spring, that you're going to have a good food chain. So culling your fish is going to be important if you want to try to grow some really big fish and minimize the stress. So there's stress that's related to water quality, oxygen, temperature, photosynthesis. All those things can lead to water quality issues that can cause problems and make it harder for the fish to thrive in it. Then if they don't have enough food that they need to eat every day, that's a stressor. So one of the things you do now is you're paying attention to these things, and you're going to minimize that stress as much as you can. So there's some of the stressors. Handling the fish, that's another thing. You want to minimize handling the fish. So that's the key stressors I can think of right on top of my brain. So if you got questions, start throwing them out here to me. Let me see. We got Chuck Brinkman. I see Larry Hardesty. Good to see him. Clean Line Painting. Hello there. You know what I forgot to do? I see Mark Dyer went from very hot out to 2 cool days in the 60s and 70s. Water went from clear to very green. Is that algae or plankton die-off or a bloom? That's a bloom. If it goes from very green to clear, that's a die-off. So when you go, when it's really hot and the temperature drops and it opens the window for your plankton bloom to kick in, it's going to kick in. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But what I'm going to tell you to do there is measure the visibility. If you guys don't have a Secchi disc, go get one. Make one, buy one, whatever, because you need to be checking the visibility depth. That's one of the key simple things that we can all do to help us make decisions. One thing I forgot, I see Troy Todd handle it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and whatever else Leanne wants to send out. We changed offices. I went by there today, and I'm kind of behind on what's going on. I see Sharmus Blake. Tim Deal, is there a difference between muck and sediment? Yeah, there is. There's a big difference between muck and sediment. Is there anything that can be done to get to reduce either besides dredging or scooping out with a track hoe? Well, let me tell you this. When you have a pond, one of the things you need to expect is it's going to begin to silt in. Now, sediment is dirt. That could be, microscopic particles of silt or clay or whatever washes in off the fields from around your pond. Muck is a combination of sediment with organic matter. So when you've got something living in the pond, especially aquatic plants, they outgrow their lifespan, they die, they begin to fall to the bottom and decompose. That organic matter starts to add to the muck, which is also made of sediment. Now, things you can do is by aeration, you can help your pond process or compost or decompose that organic matter and get it back into suspension so those nutrients can be taken up by other living things like plants and tiny fish and insects that sort of thing that goes on up the food chain. The other thing you can do is, and there's, by moving the water with aeration, that's the number one thing you can do to deal with the excessive amount of organic matter. Now, sediment, can't do anything about it. It's dirt. It can't break down to anything other than what it is. That's dirt. So, is there anything you can do to reduce it, either by dredging or scooping it out? Probably not. What guys like Mike Otto and Michael Gray and Drew Hay and those guys do, if you're not in a drought, someday you will be. And every drought's broken by a flood. You got to remember that. So during drought times, like Mike Otto right now, he and his crews are out busy as heck cleaning out ponds that have silted in over the last decade since the last major drought, over the last probably 7-8 years since we had the last drought around here. So the only way to decrease the volume is if some amount of that substance is organic matter, you can speed it up to where it can break down and decompose by moving the water. So there's my answer for that. Let's see, what time is it? 6:51. Let me see what other questions we got here if I can get to it. Okay, Joe Dupner, good to see him. Let's see here. Well, I'm not seeing any more. Just see Chuck Brinkman. Y'all throw me some questions or we're going to be done here pretty quick. See Wyatt checking in from Denver, Colorado. Russ Bernard. Hello from Arby, Texas. I'm not sure where Arby, Texas is. I know where almost every town is in Texas, and that's not one I know. Matt Garmer, good to see you. Let's see here. Neil Velian, I think it is. Todd Austin. Philip Benefield. See if we got Jeremy Duckworth. Danny Mack did the deal. Russ Bernard, starting my well for the pond soon. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about a well. The things that I run across with water wells, there's two real important things. Number one is the volume. How much water will that well spit out? And is that enough to make a significant impact on your pond? So one thing I tell people, write this down. Go back and watch this later, write it down later. 1 acre, 1 inch deep is 27,000 gallons of water. Now, if you know that basic math, then you can figure out the significance of a well. If you've got a water well that's 10 gallons per minute, you're not going to make a difference on a 4-acre pond. But if you've got a well that's 50 gallons a minute, you can make a big difference on a 4-acre pond. So the other thing about well water is the quality of it. What's in it? What's dissolved in that water? Is there a lot of gypsum in it? Is there a lot of limestone in it? The more you can learn about that water quality and the water chemistry, you can make smart decisions on whether or not to use it. Okay, let's see what Todd Stegner's got. Debbie's getting on to me. What'd you say, honey?
Just loud.
I'm being too loud. She loves me. Will a hole made in a bass crappie mouth by a hook heal, or is it there for life? It can heal. Now, if it's ripped too far, then it might not. But yes, it can heal. Let's see here. Let me look. Stephen Martin, a friend of mine, put small chunks of hay bales in his little koi pond to help with clarity, and he says it helps reduce algae. Is this true? And if so, would it help in my half-acre pond? The straw bales that they use to kill algae and for water clarity is barley straw. Now, it works really well. It's organic. Here's the problem. After it does what it does is, look at it kind of like tea leaves. It's steeping in that water, and what it exudes into the water is what is the chemical, the natural organic chemical that kills algae. The problem then is now you've got decaying barley straw in your pond, so you're adding to the organic load. Could it help in a half-acre pond? Yes, it could. Just don't overdo it. And what's interesting is it's not labeled for use because it doesn't have to be FDA approved. So who knows how much you need? It kind of varies from pond to pond. Danny Mack, I think the minerals left over from bacterial decomposition basically is clay. That's right. That's absolutely right. But when you when you take, let's say, Danny Mac, let's say we took 1,000 pounds of bushy pondweed and we broke it down. Out of that 1,000 pounds of bushy pondweed, there's probably 3 to 4 pounds of phosphorus that's going to release and go back into the water column to create more fertility. There's probably, out of that 1,000 pounds, there's going to be 900 pounds of that's water. And by the time it begins to break down, it shrinks down so much that there's just only several pounds of stuff. Out of that 1,000 pounds, there may be 1,000 pounds of, it might be a 3 or 4 pounds of clay that it stole from the water in the first place. So it's really not adding clay. It's just breaking down to the basic fundamental stuff of clay. Richard Williams, I assume a fountain is aerating my pond. Is that true? Not really. What a fountain does is it draws from maybe 2 or 3 feet deep, blows that water up into the air, and it can release oxygen just as much as it can contribute oxygen. So a fountain is really more about beauty than it is about circulating the water. Hello, Wanda Thomas. Mark Dyer, I'm feeding my bluegill 3 times a day, and they're eating the food in less than 5 minutes. Can I be overfeeding them? No, you are not overfeeding them. I'm noticing that they're putting on weight, which is exciting, but I don't want to overfeed if they can overeat like my dog does. No, if they're cleaning it up in less than 5 minutes, that's about the right amount. Now, if they're cleaning it up in 30 seconds, you can feed more, but if there's still feed floating after 5 minutes, that's when you're feeding too much. All right, Ross Bernard, no question, just wanted to listen and learn. Here we go. That's good. Christopher Aguilar, Boo Dan Daddy, good to see you, buddy. South Louisiana. Oh, okay, Russ. Bastrop. Oh, I know where Bastrop is. I'll be in that neck of the woods before long. Any update on the Palmer Lake crappie ages? Not yet. They haven't started that. They're going to start working on that this fall. And I need to get back in touch with them and see what's going on. Hello, Greg Baird. Good to see you. Ryan Triple, good to see you. James Sewell's watching. Kelly Duffy, true or false? A Secchi disk is reflecting light back through the water column from which it entered the surface. So the depth at which a Secchi disk disappears is only half the depth in which visible sunlight penetrates. All right, you guys respond to that. Let's see what you say. Kelly's watching. Y'all check him out. Answer that question. A Secchi disk is reflecting light back through the water column from which it entered at the surface. So the depth at which the Secchi disk disappears is only half the depth in visible sunlight, in which visible sunlight penetrates. True or false? Come on, you guys know the answer to that. Put that down. Respond to that question. Come on. What are you waiting on? Let's go. Recently bought an aeration system. Previously, you'd stated not to begin in this heat. When should I begin and when to stop? All right, John. Here's the way that you need to do your aeration system. Right now, you've got really, really hot water sitting at the top. You've got a thermal layer of water right there at the thermocline where there's still oxygen. Below the thermocline, it's going to be considerably cooler and anoxic and toxic. So you don't want to regurgitate that deep water back up into the water column too quickly. Now, check with the manufacturer of that system. And I'm not going to dodge the question, but I'm going to tell you, you need to talk to that manufacturing company that made that system, because they've all got different recommendations. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. On the first day, kick it on and let it run for about 15 minutes. Get downwind and you're going to smell it. You're going to smell rotten egg smell, hydrogen sulfide. You're going to smell a musty smell. You're going to see the water color change. You're going to see the water clarity change right there where those bubble plumes are coming to the surface. Now let it run for 15 minutes, turn it off. The next day, kick it back on about the same time of the day and let it run for about 30 minutes. Now I would do that in the afternoon. Start it in the afternoon because that's when your oxygen levels are going to be highest in that healthy water above the thermocline. So the second day, run it for about 30 minutes. Then the third day, run it for about an hour. The fourth day, run it for about an hour. See if you still smell that smell coming out of the water. If you can, run it for another 30 minutes to an hour, maybe 2 hours total. And then on day 4, double it. Run it for 3 hours to 4 hours and see what happens. If you can start to see fish behaving differently, or you smell that odor and it's still strong, back it off. But don't run it 24/7 until you've been able to move that water enough that you can not create too much mixing too fast. So there's the answer I'm going to give you. Start it off gradually, improve it. Accelerate it a little bit every day. And then when you get it to the point that you can run it 24/7, be checking your temperature. If your temperature exceeds 83 degrees, put it on a timer and run it from like 9 or 10 at night till 8 or 9 in the morning. And that way you can keep the temperature from skyrocketing on you. Russ Bernard, I'm building a 1-acre pond. Expect to have 20 to 30 gallons a minute on the well. Used to distill water in the Navy. Okay, let's see here. So we'll be sure to run tests on it to see what minerals there are. Thank you very much. You bet. Okay, let me tell you about that. You don't want distilled water. Distilled water is actually toxic. You want water with some minerals in it, and I've yet to come across a well that did not have minerals in it. So expect to have minerals in the water. Okay, Philip Benefield is guessing true. I can't track all those answers for Kelly, but Kelly, you're going to need to answer that question here in just a little bit. I'm going to let you do that. All right, let's see here. Russ Bernard, I hear a 1-acre pond is too small for crappie. Yes, that's true. Really like black crappie, but I'm told bass, channel cats, and panfish are best. That's true. Let me kind of put it into perspective. Small water is hard for crappie to be able to thrive. So in a 1-acre pond, even if you could figure out how to grow crappie consistently, you're going to be able to harvest about 10 or 15 pounds per year, and that's it. You know, that would be 30 crappie fillets every year, and you'd need to be harvesting those about 5 fish at a time. You know, the bottom line with crappie is in warm water ponds, they spawn first. Their babies come off the beds and start eating babies coming off of other beds. You know, they're unpredictable spawners, so you know if they're going to spawn this year or not. And then they compete with largemouth bass, except they're limited by mouth size. So they're feeding lower on the food chain than a big bass would be. So they're disrupting the food chain. So it'd be better to have bigger water. Bigger guys like me will tell you 20 acres is about what you need to have crappie. Leah Groons checking in from outside of Tulsa. Scott and Leah. Jay Spires, good to see you. Good, he responded to Kelly Duffy. Danny Mack, per physics, look it up, keep it on. Stephen Barden, fisheries biologist, checking in. You guys need to check out Stephen Barden's Facebook pages. He is doing some really, really cool stuff. He's in charge of the Lake Science Management Program for Major League Fishing. The guy's a superstar. Check him out. Jason Foley, what's the best way to check temperature throughout the water column? You know, I've always done it with either an electronic one you can lower down in the water like a YSI meter, or you can do it with a mercury-based kind of a thermometer, but just by dropping it down, letting it sit for a couple of minutes, then pulling it up really quick and checking it. Let's see here. Sharmus Blake, we're getting ready to sell our pond, working with Kenny Sanderson of Kansas. He asked if we want red ear and bluegill, or should we skip the bluegill for our 1/4-acre pond? Kind of depends on your goals. You're going to have yellow perch and smallmouth bass. I'd be tempted to skip the bluegills. I'd be tempted to. You can always add them later for smallmouth. Yep, gotcha. Okay. Hey, David Kent, good to see you. Ronnie Davis. All right, Todd Stegner. I'm gonna stop a minute, do a little commercial. Hey, I don't have any. Hey, wait. Yeah, I do. If I can reach it. Y'all hang on a minute. Oh, I'm covering up the camera. As you can tell, I don't have my tripod either. Honey, can you see those magazines back there? Yeah. Can you grab one? I'm going to do a commercial. So, hey, Pond Boss Magazine, if you guys don't subscribe, it's time. $35 a year. Oh, shoot.
I can't.
Can't reach
Open
them?
up the door.
Okay.
And get it.
No. I'll get it later. We'll get it later. Don't worry about it. I should have thought about it, but I was running late. Hey, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. It lasts a year. Pond Boss Magazine. Also want to thank Texas Hunter Products for sponsoring this show. They make great fish feeders, deer stands. Check them out at TexashunterProducts.com. Purina Mills, I'm a big fan. I've appreciated the way that they have developed the fish foods over the years, and they're a sponsor of this show, as is Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman. Okay, Todd, let's see. 1 to 2 acre pond, half covered with lily pads. Want to remove most but all. Best way to do it and when? Cooler weather with spray. Well, by the time we wait for cooler weather, those things are going to go dormant. So if you're going to take some of them out, take them out now. Go to Aquaplant. Aquaplant.tamu.edu, I think it is. Look up Aquaplant, and you'll see a variety of choices as how to treat those plants. Now, I stopped actively treating aquatic plants about 10 years ago because it wasn't fun to me. But when I did it, if I was going to kill lily pads or American lotus, I would use glyphosate with a good surfactant. That's what I would use. Now, one of the secrets I learned was don't soak the leaf. Mist it on. Follow the label directions. Now, you have other choices now. So if you go to Aquaplant, look that up, or even message Kelly Duffy right here on this page. He can coach you up on it as well. So, you want to get them before they go dormant while they're still actively growing. Let's see here. Kelly? Yep, Kelly Duffy. Yep, okay, he's answering us. Go to Toledo Bend if you want crappie. Keeps the fish in pond standard. Here you go. That's good. Dave Sefton finally got off before 9 o'clock. Got to hear live. Awesome. Good to see Dave. Dave Sefton is a longtime friend of ours. He's an earth-moving contractor, pond builder from Brownstown, Illinois. Matter of fact, when my office gets set up right and we got a hand-carved Pond Boss logo, the little Pond Boss guy, well, Dave Sefton worked that out. There's a great wood carver right there in Brownstown, and Dave's the one that orchestrated that. So remember Dave when you see that Pond Boss. Let's see here. Let's see. Stephen Martin. Who's he with? I'm in Kansas and need to seal my half-acre pond. Would like to contact him. Kenny Sanderson. If you will go to pondboss.com, click on Ask the Boss, and look for Snipe, then you're going to find Kenny. If you can't find him, email me at boblusk@outlook.com, and I'll connect the dots. Mark Dyer, Stephen is awesome. The bluegill I'm feeding are in a single location on a 35-acre lake. Will they stay in the relative area or return to the feeding location after winter? Yeah, they'll come back. How do they redistribute through a winter under ice? They'll redistribute based on where they have the best oxygen levels, close proximity to food, and cover, places where they can hide. So, yes, structure can help hold them, but they're also going to be looking for thermal refuge. Keep that in mind, even in the wintertime. When your ponds freeze up in the winter, it might be minus 17 degrees sitting on top of the ice, but the ice is going to be 32. The thickness is going to be based on how long it stays cold, but you can bet your bottom dollar, you stick a thermometer in that pond through that ice and go down to the bottom, that water temperature is going to be about 40 degrees, 39 or 40 degrees, because that's the water's densest at that temperature, and it sits on the bottom, and that's where those bluegill want to be as long as there's enough oxygen to support them. Let's see here. Yep. Kunio Akiyama. Good to see you, buddy. Larry Hardesty. Yeah, email me about water testing. That's right. Doug Cusick. I pump water into my pond weekly as it loses half an inch every 24 hours through the bottom and sandy soil. Pond never got sealed before filling with water. My well is 120 feet deep, 6-inch cased, with a 7.5 horsepower pump installed, rated at 245 gallons per minute. I can raise the level up 2 inches every 24 hours. It definitely cools the water temperature too. That's good stuff. South Central Kansas. Excellent. Danny Mac, no wonder our fish can see us and even seem to recognize whether we're there to feed or fish. You know what? They get programmed into that. Hello, Colin Owens. Good to see you. Christy Price, you too. So, there's some of the tips and tidbits. Kelly's answered the question. So, I'm going to go ahead and cut out and start making my way back to Granbury. We got about a 2-hour ride and got to hang out with Nolan. So, that was pretty fun. So, I always appreciate y'all watching this show. And, sorry I was a little bit late, but I was hanging out with Nolan. That was a pretty important deal to both of us. So, I'm going to wrap up, and I think next Wednesday, I don't know where I'm going to be next Wednesday, but if I'm traveling, I'll find a spot, and we'll do this again. So, as always, I appreciate everybody that watches this. If you got questions, send me an email at boblusk@outlook.com, and we'll get back together. So, I will see you next Wednesday night. Adios.